The 5-seat car-like CUV is the most successful marketplace anywhere in cars right now.
These cars are primary cars. They're not the fun car in the garage. These cars are the cars you gotta live with all the time. And they're well priced. You're getting a lot for your money in this category.
We recommend the Mazda CX-5 a lot. One of the amazing things about this CX-5 is that this thing is fully loaded, all-wheel drive, gorgeous interior, every little piece you could probably want in a car like this, and it's $34,000.
Because of the Mazda, because it is so good, and there's so many things we like about it, this is the starting place. From here, we can branch out, we can go to other cars.
This is the all-new Jeep Grand Cherokee. The version prior to this was that really squinty-eyed one.
This is the generation where Jeep can fix everything with the Cherokee. They also have to sell at a good price point, and this car is $40,000.
The Subaru Crosstrek might seem like the oddball in this group, but it is a great representation of what Subaru would like to do to play in this world.
This is the 2018 Subaru Crosstrek. Everywhere we go, we see Crosstreks in every color.
It's been so successful, in fact, if you think about recent announcements, Ford has decided to no longer sell its Ford Focus in the US, except they're going to sell a lifted version quite a bit like this Crosstrek.
They're everywhere. And have you noticed how sneaky Subaru is being? They've grown to be actually big cars.
Size-wise, this is almost exactly the same exterior dimensions and height as the other two. They took an Impreza and they gave it a lift kit.
The car you drive every day should be fun.
But it's got to do the boring stuff too, like commute, be affordable, and run your errands.
You can have both, and we'll help you find it. Fun to drive cars and great driving experiences for everyone.
On Everyday Driver.
Brought to you by Covercraft.
Stylistically speaking, the CX-5 is right in that new Mazda look. Everything about it is so refined. Look at the front headlights and this chrome trim, and it goes right from under the front headlight, and then it defines that grille shape. They've actually come up with something unique and more interesting, and it stands out.
This CX-5 is Mazda's Grand Touring Edition. The Grand Touring is always the upper trim of everything you get from Mazda. That means it has most everything you can think of. Yes, it is all-wheel drive. Yes, it has a gorgeous leather package, nice sunroof.
Mazda is currently going through this parchment white leather phase on the interiors, which I think is a horrible mistake. If you're wearing blue jeans or own the car longer than 8 days, the seats are going to be filthy. The seats are excellent for road trips. They're excellent for commuting. I'm just comfortable.
I'm not sure what this fake wood texture is here between the vents, and it doesn't look like it's all that well fitted. But it is nice breakup. I do like the shapes of the vents. This is just a nice looking cabin. It feels like somebody cared. This steering wheel takes a bit of getting used to. There are quite a few little buttons. However, I'd rather have actual buttons for things than anything on the touchscreen. It's also very intuitive. It just works kind of like you think it should.
It's strange where Mazda is in the marketplace. It's like it's pushing the boundaries of the Europeans, but it's still priced way back here with the Japanese and maybe the Koreans.
There's the old Cherokee. I do think this Cherokee is better looking than the prior version. Also think that's a pretty low bar. This has gotten a little more palatable, a little more for everybody, and as a result, it's also gotten more bland.
They have fixed everything, which is great. It looks appealing, and I do like the size. But if you take off the badge and you take off the 7 grille slots on the front of this car, what is it? This car needs more ruggedness, and you shouldn't have to move up to the Trailhawk to get it.
For your $40,000, you do get just about everything in this interior. It's not as nicely designed as the one in the Mazda. Of course, this does have the 8-inch screen Uconnect system in it, which is really a very good system. It does have everything tied to it, however.
The time you sit down it from the very first time to understanding how the controls work, where they are, it's very simple and easy to understand, and you pick it up like that.
This has pretty similar room to the CX-5, but sitting lower in the CX-5 feels a lot more relaxing than the really high, kind of on its tiptoes seating position here in this Cherokee.
It's got incredible space. It does have a lot more sound deadening that puts it in the category of, okay, I feel like I'm getting something for my money, and it does feel usable. Like you can put your feet on the dash, you can get it messy, and it's still gonna be the car that you can get away taking it to dinner, but there's such a fine line. Subaru has taken this rally breeding thing of theirs, and they've been watching too many tractor pulls on TV, and they combined them to make the Crosstrek. It screams adventure. It screams, I'm out there every weekend, maybe even on weekdays. You know, I get off work and, you know, we go canoeing for 6 hours. This is your car.
The normal WRX, the standard Impreza, has exactly this amount of room. This is the same thing, just jacked up. You can find good room in the rear seats. It is a surprisingly large hatch. One of our largest pieces of gear actually fits better in the Crosstrek than it does in the other two.
The interior is wonderfully functional. That's a great way of saying that it's the place I don't want to be. But that's not why you buy a Subaru. You don't think, I'm gonna get a luxury car, I'm gonna get a really great place to be. I should buy the Subaru, I should consider Subaru. That's never been the thing.
This Crosstrek has a lot of tech in it. It has heated seats. It has what they call X mode, which is kind of a hill descent mode that gives the Jeep a real run for its money. There's Apple CarPlay in here. This is a very technologically advanced car. It only costs $32,000, but it is only $2,000 less expensive than the CX-5, and it feels like a luxury car by comparison. This still has a utilitarian feel that Subarus have had forever.
This is the car that you can have your feet up on the dash. You can spill whatever in this car and eventually hose the interior out if you ever get around to it. This is the car that you could never wash, and it would be fine for its entire existence.
This has Mazda's 2.5-liter Sky Active engine, about 187 horsepower and similar torque.
I would have preferred the 2-liter turbo engine in this car.
It just picks a solid ratio, which is something a CVT doesn't want to do, and it lets you hang out in that ratio until you get to redline. Mazda's done a great job with their Sky Active engine lineup of increasing miles per gallon and getting you a lot of power without going to turbocharging. This has Mazda's 2.5-liter Sky Active engine, about 187 horsepower and similar torque. The 6-speed automatic that this is joined to is by far the best engine and transmission combination of any of these three CUVs. You can manually shift it. Of course, you can only do that here with the gear lever itself. It does not have the paddles, which it really would benefit from.
The way the engine makes power is surprising. Of course, I'd love it if Mazda screwed a turbo to this engine, but naturally aspirated, and we're coming up on almost 10,000 feet on this road, and it's still pulling, which is great.
This is the only one of these three with a dreaded CVT, a continuously variable transmission. Now, Subaru has put a CVT in most of their lineup in the interest of gas mileage. What that means is you can floor it and it just picks the optimal RPM and stays there as the car gets faster and faster and faster. It keeps changing the ratio behind the scenes. When you add to the fact this is the slowest car of the group with only about 150 horsepower and torque, it really feels sluggish by comparison unless you force the transmission to do your bidding.
So you slide the transmission lever over into manual, try to drop it down, and the transmission is very sleepy and doesn't want to actually respond. The only thing saving this car is the paddles. It does have paddles and the other two do not.
What that means is when you pull a paddle, this transmission acts like it's in a certain gear. It just picks a solid ratio, which is something a CVT doesn't want to do, and it lets you hang out in that ratio until you get to redline. You have to get above about 3,500, 4,500 RPM before this car feels like it has any power at all.
And I understand why they want to do it. It's fuel mileage. It's always having the engine in the right power band, but the engine doesn't have a lot of power to begin with. 152 horsepower, 152. My phone has more horsepower. But they backed off everything that I love about Subaru as a brand, the sporting character and this rally nature, to make it more accessible and more appealing to more people.
Now you can get this Crosstrek in a manual transmission. Of course, that would be more fun. That's not a surprise to anyone, but I don't know that you'd really end up commuting and having it as a family car as commonly if you had it as a manual. You'll probably wind up in this CVT if you buy it. And I say you'll probably wind up because these are everywhere. I swear the middle of the country can't buy anything but Crosstreks. This car is so hip, it practically needs a man bun. This Cherokee comes with 3 possible engines. You have a little 2-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder, this big V6, but it also comes with the new turbocharged 2-liter 4-cylinder and a real workhorse, almost 300 horsepower and 290 pound-feet of torque.
I would have preferred the 2-liter turbo engine in this car. I bet you it would have lightened up the front to give even more information, because this is not informative, it's not fun, it's just CUV, almost borderline minivan.
The V6 in this makes about 270 horsepower, about 240 pound-feet of torque, which puts it almost 100 in both categories above both of the other CUVs we brought here. You would think with that much extra power, this would really feel like the hot rod of this group. Because of this 9-speed transmission, this Jeep never really feels as fast as I would like it to, in spite of that big, powerful engine.
It's trying to behave like a CVT. It thinks it's a CVT. It's trying to act like it every time. They say it's optimized to keep the Jeep in the sweet spot. Nuh-uh.
You can find the power of this engine, but the truth is you really have to search for it. You do have the ability to take it over into manual here and shift for yourself. Look at that. Red line, kind of. Did you hear that shift though? That was dragging a shift if I've ever heard one.
Doesn't know what to do with itself in manual. It wants to do things for me, and I'm firmly telling it, no, no, no. Not that it has to be a dual clutch, snappy transmission, but something more.
I've left it in a gear, and guess what? There's power when that happens. Let's downshift. There it is. This 9-speed will respond to you manually shifting it here with the gear lever, but it's going to think about it for a second to decide if it agrees with your decision. Downshift. There it is.
I can't say I'm slicing through corners. There's a ton of body roll. Driving up to this shoot location, we were on the freeway for quite a while, and I was in the Cherokee, and I did like it. It's higher in its suspension and really desperately wants to be an off-road vehicle. Even though the CX-5 is not the smallest car of this bunch, it feels like the smallest and almost the most nimble. It's kind of in between the Jeep and the Subaru, but all these cars are very closely matched.
The CX-5 has the same chassis as the Mazda 3, whereas the CX-3 does not. It has the smaller chassis. Bit confusing, but this is the CUV version of Mazda's very successful and good to drive Mazda 3 sedan.
I still want to believe that this car will bring some sort of smile to my face in a corner. No, not really. I can't say I'm slicing through corners. There's a ton of body roll. The car does grip when it's finally settled its weight and it's thrown in. It does grip, it's good.
There's no information from the steering wheel. It's an electric steering rack. That's not really too surprising. This isn't a car you buy for steering feel anyway. What's nice is it gives you confidence. The ride isn't punishing at all. It's actually got a very soft ride, but at the same time, it never feels like it's wallowing. It feels very taut when you turn it into a corner quickly.
It just seems like for mountain adventures like this, where the cars are never going to be taken off-road, a gravel fire road might be the biggest thing they'll accomplish all day long. They'll always be like this, just kind of cruising, hunting for things.
Let's be honest, you will sit in this CX-5 in a lot of traffic situations. This speed is probably about what most buyers will do. Good news, it's very nice at this speed. Oh good, we've added an RV to the front of the chain. Do you see this? It's one of those rent an RV things, which means the person driving it has no idea what they're doing, and now they're in front of me on a rainy, foggy road in a national park. If you see this before I've returned home, please tell my wife and son I love them, and I hope to be home at some point.
Driving up to the shoot location, we were on the freeway for quite a while, and I was in the Cherokee, and I did like it for the comfortability. I just felt sorted on the freeway. I really appreciated it for that reason. I suppose part of Jeep ownership is that comfort that you've got in hailstorms like this, knowing your car has got your back. You might think I'm pushing too hard on wanting it to be sporty, but I'm trying to find some character that the Cherokee would have. Is it a sporting nature? Is it more of a rugged off-road thing? Or is it just another model in your lineup that is determined by size?
It's bizarre to feel like this is the high-riding car of the three, and yet it's no taller than the others are. The seating position and the way it has body roll and uncertainty in corners makes it feel like a high-riding vehicle in the way the other two don't. This feels like an SUV, big and a little bit lumbering. It doesn't hide its weight, it doesn't hide its size, just not all that confidence-inspiring if you drive it quickly around a corner. Granted, you probably won't.
This is the car that wants to be a truck so desperately. Have you seen the jounce between the top of the wheel and the bottom of the wheel arch? It's higher in its suspension and really desperately wants to be an off-road vehicle. It just wants to look the part.
We've been kind of lulled into a false sense of safety as drivers in this country that we need to have four-wheel drive and a high seating position. Subaru has taken their Impreza, given it a lift kit, and solved both problems. When the road starts to twist and you have to throw a car down a road with some corners, this is by far the best of these three. Now, it's still kind of a car in that regard. I don't know why it has a ridiculous lift. It allows us to say, hey, look, it's our little CUV. It's got what's called X mode, which is a hill descent mode that you can use at really low speed that really challenges the Jeep to its all-wheel drive superiority.
This car does have the best handling, and it tracks well, but it's still, for me, very vague. I liken that to the tires and the suspension height, honestly.
Even though I don't think this car needs a lift kit, I think you just want an Impreza. It still handles better than the other two. This is very confidence-inspiring. It has the tightest steering rack, and you can actually go quickly on a back road and it won't let you down.
I don't want to make this Crosstrek do anything but just kind of cruise and carry people and gear and stuff and go have an adventure. This is a car you buy and you're going to want to keep forever because of the nature of the car. It just runs and works and can be used for so many different adventures. If you've never done a drive like this or anything way up in the mountains, the amount of weather, the varying weather, and just the adventure of it.
This is one of those vehicles that just gets an 8 across the board. The more I drive the Crosstrek, the more I like it, the more I can see why it is a successful car for Subaru. It has the bones of all the good things that are true with the Subaru WRX. This is the weather we've had the whole shoot. It's been this weird mist, fog, cars come out of nowhere because everybody's driving slower than we are, and we aren't driving that fast.
If you've never done a drive like this or anything way up in the mountains, the amount of weather, the varying weather, and just the adventure of it.
Sleet, hail, snow, a little bit of sunshine, lots of wet elk. What's a wet elk smell like? That has to be pungent.
Give me an errand, a long road trip, ski, mountains, hiking, whatever, you name the trip. The CX-5 is the car.
This is one of those vehicles that just gets an 8 across the board. And so many other things in the market segment, including among these three cars, just struggle to even get 8s in any category, let alone in pretty much every category.
The Jeep is the kind of car that you want to just throw caution to the wind and be able to bomb around all this traffic, everybody that's creeping along and freaked out about the road and hail. This is the car that you want to say, come on everybody, I'm in a Jeep, I'm leading the way. And it's such a great choice that's not an Expedition or an Explorer or something like that.
Honestly, this Cherokee feels every bit as big as that Yukon to drive. It feels that kind of large SUV, and it isn't. It's significantly lighter, it's significantly smaller, and yet, compared to these other two, it feels Yukon in size. That's my biggest problem with it, that and the $40,000 price tag. What's
so great about this car is after you get done using it, all you're going to remember is the adventure. Look at the life we lived. That's what the Crosstrek is about. Nothing about the controls and the mechanics of this car are really compelling, and I don't care. Go have an adventure, clean it out or don't. Go do your thing in this car.
The more I drive the Crosstrek, the more I like it. The more I can see why it is a successful car for Subaru. It has the bones of all the good things that are true with the Subaru WRX. My struggle is it feels like a stopgap. It feels like taking a car that you should have bought, the WRX with a hatch, hello Subaru, and make it into an almost CUV so that it can compete in this market.
The CX5 is confirming everything we tell you on the podcast. Somewhat fun to drive, they're just comfortable, they're a great car. That's why the CX5 is my #1 choice.
This feels like the one that my family would love. It would do everything I needed to do, and I wouldn't hate the fact that I have to drive it. It's genuinely fun to drive.
The Jeep is second. Yeah, it's big, it's heavy, it's not a full-size SUV, and it doesn't need to be.
This Jeep's a genuinely nice place to be. It's not great to drive, though, and it's expensive.
But the Crosstrek, I have to put my love of cars aside to buy this car.
There is some personality here, and there is some fun. You have to dig deep to find it. We hope you like spelunking. We hope you have a really good-sized shovel.